candidates, how perfect are they in terms of being blackmailed? Are they the perfect blackmailed candidates?
I think so. I mean, when we think in terms of blackmail, we think maybe some foreign intelligence agency might be the blackmail agent. But I think in this case, it's our own government has the goods on them to keep them in line, to make sure they do exactly what they're expected to do. I think this is primarily the case with Obama, although with Rahm Emanuel, I think it's quite clear he may have ties to the Israeli intelligence service, Mossad. Whether they would put him in a blackmail position or not is, I think, we just don't know. He may just be very loyal to working for them. I mean, as a veteran of the Israel Defense Force, he obviously has had past connections with them. But especially with Obama, I think the blackmail for him comes from the agencies one agency that I think he absolutely worked for in the past, and that's the CIA. Back when he was graduated from Columbia, he went to work for Business International Corporation in Manhattan, which was a CIA front. It was sold to the Economist Intelligence Unit, which was pretty much part of Britain's MI6 in 1986.
You also mentioned in your April 26th article, Bush lame duck eavesdropping. Can you discuss that and how it all ties around President Obama wanting to do investigations on torture, but then again, the Bush White House, knowing this information, had pretty much put a gun to Obama's head in terms of blackmail?
Well, that's right. One of the things we saw with the Bush administration with warrantless wiretapping was it was able to gather together an awful lot of intelligence without a criminal predicate, including political intelligence using the NSA. And of course, all this information gathered on these presidential candidates, including Obama, was used on them. And in the case of Obama, we saw every one of his campaign promises he basically reneged on. Closing Guantanamo, the torture, even some fundamental issues that were core Democratic Party issues. He basically sounded more like a Republican than a Democrat. And I would note that a year ago, this past November, this was November of '09, George H.W. Bush and Jeb Bush paid an unannounced visit to the White House to meet with Obama. The White House said, it was a mere courtesy call. Well, courtesy calls of that nature are normally not done in this town unless there's a real reason for it. You usually don't get ex-presidents to the White House unless it's a state funeral or some state dinner involving some foreign head of state. And even then, the presence of a former president is rare. So there was much more to this meeting, I think, than meets the eye. And I wouldn't be surprised if the old man Bush and Jeb Bush had in their possession some of the information that was gathered from these wiretaps, because we saw right after that Obama governing more as a Republican president than as a Democratic president.
During the spring, we had the BP oil spill, one of the most catastrophic events to the Gulf of Mexico in recent history, comparing to the Exxon Valdez spill in Alaska. But again, we go back to the blackmail and the cover-up behind this BP oil spill stemming from Rahm Emanuel's shady past in his free condo in D.C. And again, you mentioned Stan Greenberg, who is a lobbyist for BP. Let's go into length about that. And you also mentioned in one of your articles about Hammond, Indiana, and a potential spill from BP out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we see with the whole potential for blackmail. You know, Emanuel staying at a townhouse free of charge, which should have gotten him hauled before the House Ethics Panel. I mean, they got Charlie Rangel for a lot less than that. I mean, they didn't get Charlie Rangel because he was living in a free townhouse provided by a BP contractor. But nevertheless, they went after Charlie Rangel. They seem to go after certain people, but certain others are left alone. So here we have Obama basically allowing BP to be in control of the entire aftermath of the oil disaster in the Gulf. unprecedented. It would have been like during Exxon Valdez that the president would have said, "Okay, Exxon, you're in charge of the cleanup," rather than the EPA or the Coast Guard. But this is what Obama does, where you've got the Coast Guard taking orders from BP rather than the other way around. And of course, you had the Coast Guard commandant, Thad Allen, had already been in negotiations to go work for BP after he retired as commandant of the Coast Guard. So the whole thing was something that looked like it was done because of this connection with Emanuel and the Rosa DeLauro Greenberg condo, and the fact Greenberg lobbies for BP, and now this other information about the condo may have been wired up for video and sound, and God knows what information BP and others had on not only Emanuel but also on Barack Obama when he would use that same condo when he was in the Senate, when Michelle and the kids were out of town for certain activities.
Weren't BP big contributors to the Obama campaign back when he was running for president?
Yeah, BP gave Obama more than any of the other oil companies. And you look at Obama, and the Wall Street contributions. It's quite clear that he was pretty well favored by that money, that Wall Street money. So it's really shouldn't come as any shock that he puts in charge at the White House as chief of staff Rahm Emanuel, who came from that same type of thing with the $16 million he made, and not only that, but also Emanuel was also on the board of Freddie Mac, and we know that was rife with all kinds of corruption too.
And they also received bailout funds. Finally, on BP, Nalco, based out of Naperville, Illinois, and their Corexit 9500. If you simply look up their material safety data sheet, it will list that the dispersant is highly toxic, banned in the European Union, yet they were allowed to use this in the BP oil spill, going back to the entire cover-up and blackmail between Obama and Emanuel, correct?
Absolutely, and you've got ticking time bombs, like you mentioned, Hammond, the BP plant there. We already had there was a spill, not BP, but there was a spill in Michigan that leaked into Lake Michigan. But we just see the EPA. The problem with these regulatory agencies like the EPA and all the others, often called the fourth branch of government, is that the regulatory agencies are now controlled by the industries they're supposed to regulate. So nothing has changed under Obama, really. The regulators are controlled by the industries they're supposed to regulate, and certainly that's the case with the EPA and some of these petrochemical and oil companies.
It's quite clear, Wayne, with Rahm Emanuel as White House Chief of Staff for the last 2 years, that he is not eligible to run for mayor of Chicago, yet the election board in Chicago approved his stature in the ballot for the upcoming election. We've talked on the phone several times, and we've discussed our theories on what could happen to Chicago with Emanuel as the mayor of Chicago. How dangerous could it be for the second city to have Rahm Emanuel as mayor of Chicago?
Well, remember what happened when you had America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, a very corrupt mafiosi type in New York. I mean, we had 9/11 happen. Remember that incident occurred on Election Day, and Giuliani actually tried to extend his term as mayor, like he's like Silvio Berlusconi in Italy. He tried to like just violate the city charter in New York and stay on as mayor. I mean, this is unprecedented what some of these people will try to do. So now we look at Chicago. You've got Emanuel will try to take on that mantle, because I think Emanuel's got bigger ambitions beyond mayor of Chicago. I think he's always, since he can't be Speaker of the House, he may be interested in running for President of the United States, just like Giuliani was interested in running for President of the United States. But what we might see in Chicago is Emanuel becoming the new America's mayor. And look, they control. He has access. Look at the brother, the super agent. They have all kinds of ties to the media. They can make that reality happen. all they got to do is snap their fingers, and so you got Rahm Emanuel no longer this tough, this thuggish guy. He's America's mayor, and I would point out that the old Sears Tower is now owned by Larry Silverstein, who also, of course, had the lease on the World Trade Center. So I don't like what's coming together in this perfect storm in Chicago. I think there's a lot of things that could happen because you've got the organized crime element with the casinos. You got Emanuel, he's dirty. His ties with Israeli intelligence and the Israeli government and the Likud party. They try to always say, "Oh, he's a liberal Israel." He's liberal. He doesn't like the Likud. That's a shell game people should ignore. You've got and Silverstein owning the old Sears Tower. You put that all together, I think you got a recipe for another potential 9/11 in Chicago, one that will propel Emanuel to superstar status and possible national political office.
I also want to point out during the summer of 2010, the Army National Guard, along with troops from Poland, were conducting military drills in the Chicagoland area, including Toyota Park out in Bridgeview, Illinois, where they were conducting possible chemical spills, plane attacks, pretty much drills for a potential terrorist attack. So, Wayne, with what you're saying, it actually is coming to fruition in terms of the National Guard doing their training exercises. I recall going on the train and I would see near Bensonville, Illinois, National Guard conducting checkpoint drills. So what you're saying is actually correct, Wayne, and let's hope that nothing bad happens to Chicago. Finally,
well, let's hope not, but
no, go ahead.
Yeah, let's hope not. Right, because it's America's city. And although New York was bad enough, Chicago's more at the heartland of America than New York is.
Wayne, final thoughts with you. Anything that we've missed in this investigation on Rahm Emanuel and the Chicago Democratic machine, and anything else you would like to cover on Rahm Emanuel?
Again, I would go back to look at some of his earlier campaigns for Congress in the 5th District. I spoke to many people who ran against him, Democrats and Republicans and independents, and it was quite clear that this guy is a dirty operator. He will be as dirty a mayor of Chicago as you've ever seen with anybody in the past, and that includes the Dailies, because of this involvement he has with casinos, foreign intelligence operatives, and some of this seamier side of Chicago politics, including his association with the real estate developers, the same people that try to get the Olympics. Because let's remember, as chief of staff, Emanuel gave the final green light for Obama to go to Copenhagen and try to get the Olympics. So Emanuel thought he could make money on that, and so that money taints him, as well as Valerie Jarrett, the late school board president, and the other individuals who were part of that, including Michelle Obama, I should add.
Wayne, you mentioned that you wanted to challenge Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune, and the Daily Herald to try to pick up your story and see if they can do some investigation. Yet, from your report in the summer, none of those papers have really done anything. None of the TV networks in Chicago, ABC7, NBC5, CBS2, WGN, none of them have really picked up this story or have done any investigation on Rahm Emanuel. How important is it for you and for the voters of Chicago to become aware of Rahm Emanuel and prevent catastrophe from happening in the second city?
It's really important, and I hate to say it, but the grand old days of Chicago newspapers, the Tribune and the Sun-Times, when the reporters used to hang out at the Billy Goat Tavern downtown Chicago, I think are over with. This has a lot to do with what's happening in the newspapers across the country, but the fact is that Sam Zell owns took over the Tribune and basically emaciated it. The Sun Times was emaciated by Hollinger and Conrad Black when he owned it. They've never recovered. There is no independent. The days of Mike Royko and these others are over with. And I only see the internet, some of the blogs picking up the slack to do that. But there's a resource issue. It's not cheap to go after some of this corruption. But I would hope that people in Chicago try to get as much information as they can from the internet on these connections with Emanuel and the Obama group, Axelrod, who used to work for the Chicago Tribune and still has some connections there. But the days of a vibrant Chicago press to go after this corruption are unfortunately over with and a thing of the past.
Wayne, fire out your website for those who are interested in what you do and would like to read some of your articles.
Yes, it's WayneMadsonReport.com, and I started it because we also here in Washington have lost the muckraking spirit of Jack Anderson and Drew Pearson, the Washington merry-go-round, even people before their time, going back to H.L. Mencken and the work he did in Baltimore, which covered Washington too, Washington politics.